Hey guys, before we start, just wanted to say that this episode of the YAWP podcast is sponsored by MUDWTR. MUDWTR is an awesome coffee alternative that blends delicious organic ingredients such as adaptogenic mushrooms and turmeric, designed to give you a sustained energy without the jitters. Each serving of MUDWTR comes with only 1/7 the amount of caffeine that comes with coffee, so you get a focused energy boost without the crash. And if you're looking to cut back on coffee, MUDWTR is a great alternative that is also gluten-free, vegan, and keto friendly. So, if you're ready to upgrade your morning, feel free to use my link and try MUDWTR out. You'll get 15% off any new purchase that you buy, and if you decide to subscribe and get a starter kit, you'll get $20 off along with a free frother. So go ahead, try it out, ditch coffee, drink MUDWTR. Now, back to the episode. Welcome back, everybody, to the You Ask Me podcast, the show where you ask the questions, they answer them, and I'm just the guy in the middle. And this week we have an amazing guest. She has over 20 years of accounting experience and a 3-decade track record in entertainment and IP. In 2015, she launched her own boutique forensic accounting firm, Boschan Corp, while serving several organizations as a board director. And she's also taught in the past music royalty accounting and applied economics at the Los Angeles College of Music. I want to give a warm welcome to Mrs. Cedar Boschan. Cedar, how's it going?
Yeah, everything is going great. We have the Netflix is a Joke festival going on, so I've been
Yeah.
going to that, laughing. And I know you're an entertainment sports focused attorney, and it was fun last night. I saw the comedian Nikki Glazer, who this is on the heels of her roasting Tom Brady, so she had a lot of
Oh,
Tom
wow.
Brady jokes.
It's like that roast was pretty wild.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
it got a bit shaky for a second when they mentioned Robert Kraft.
Oh,
Uh,
I didn't see the actual roast.
I only saw the clip of it. It was just like Tom Brady like someone made a joke about Robert Kraft and like with a situation he was in a while ago, and then Tom Brady got up, went to the person on the mic and was like, don't do that shit again," and then sat back down. It was
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, yeah, so let's just get started. I mean, the way the show works is the first question always comes from me, and that's what's new with you? I know we kind of answer that semi, but
Sure. So lately I've had a few high profile litigation cases. Um, so especially one in particular that I'm working on right now, which is a case against Disney about copyright infringement, brought by a gentleman named Buck Woodall. And so that case is, public. So I can't usually talk about my cases. But that's something I'm currently working on, and planning a trip for June to go to New York for the Music Investors Conference, because IP valuation is another area in which our firm focuses.
that's awesome. Wait, so you said the case is public, so it's are you able to share like what Disney is potentially copyright infringing on?
You're welcome to look up the
Fair.
complaint and include it in your podcast, but I'm not going to obviously speak for my client's legal counsel, but it's the allegations in the complaint.
Fair. Okay. Cool. Got you. So yeah, that's awesome. You seem like you got a lot going on. So yeah, let's get started with some of these questions. This first one comes from Jason. He wants to know what sparked your interest in the music side of law.
Well, I want to make it clear that I'm an accountant, not a lawyer.
Right.
Uh, and so um, really it's what I do. A forensic accountant is accounting for a legal purpose. And so it does combine elements of the accounting side and the legal side. We're ascertaining legal compliance and what damages were or weren't in light of that. And so I didn't really start out from a standpoint of law and go into music. It's more the other way around. Um, so actually, when I was like 11 years old, I thought I wanted to start a record company. And so I embarked on a journey into the music industry, including in middle school. I co founded an all ages music club. I got into artist management. I did all kinds of things in the music industry, including for when I was 16, I did a high school graduation project at American Recordings, which was Rick Rubin's label at Warner Brothers. And so I completed an internship there, and my boss in that position was the head of WME Music for a long time, and I helped him book Lollapalooza. He was one of the co-founders of Lollapalooza. I helped him that year. And so my roots in the music industry predate even college. And so then in college, I entered USC, the University of Southern California, as a business major. But when I arrived, they had a new program that they were announcing, which included a variety of music industry degrees. And I chose the business version of the music industry degree. So I still took the same accounting classes and economics classes that all the business students take, but I also took copyright law and, entertainment distribution classes. And so that really formed the perfect foundation for me to get into accounting on the royalty audit side. So I became a royalty auditor soon after college, and worked at this really prestigious boutique firm called Walensky, Becker and Hurwitz. And, we did audits for the Beatles and things like that. And the Harry Fox agency. And so through that experience, I got deeper into accounting. And all the way along, while I was a royalty auditor, I was looking at, what the copyright law says and what a company did, and what the contract says and what a company did, and working really closely with attorneys and legal teams to make sure there's a sound legal basis for any types of damages claims. And, my practice just further broadened from there. So now we have clients where, we're on the defense side of these things, corporate clients. And so that is how, why I'm in the forensic accounting field is actually through the music industry and not the other way around.
That's interesting. That's great. And if you don't mind clarifying, what does a royalty auditor do? Like they check up on royalties for musicians, or?
Sure. Yes. Well, so there's all kinds of royalties. And so even though I got into royalty auditing from the music side, I have done a lot of different kinds of royalty audits. So whether that be for patent or trademark or film or TV profit participation rights and video games, I do a lot of game work. And so what a royalty is it's a contingent compensation amount that's paid usually to a licensor or a creator pursuant to an agreement, although there are statutory royalties for oil and gas, which I've done some of those audits too, as well as, music audits or music royalty rates, I should say. There are statutory royalty rates. And so a royalties auditor's job is to see whether the company that it is auditing complied with the royalty terms of the agreement, the contingent compensation terms, and often other terms too. I mean, it's a little, royalty audit is a misnomer because it's really a contract compliance audit is what it is. And so there's different kinds of damages that could be not related to royalties that we might include in a report. But the slang term is royalty audit, although we could call it a compliance examination. That is the more formal term. Those engagements just focus on ascertaining compliance with the agreement or with the law. And if we find non-compliance, then we measure the damages basically. And so what does a royalty auditor do? Nowadays, certainly in the entertainment industry, although this is not true for every industry, but for the entertainment industry where you're not selling not often selling physical products, what's happened is it's become a big data sort of engagement. I mean, we have to deal with billions of lines of reports from streaming services in order to thoroughly follow the dollar from the parent company, the entertainment company that we are auditing, all the way through the different subsidiaries to our clients' royalty statements, or we have to ascertain the degree to which it was underreported. And so when you say, what does a royalty auditor do? I think, back in the day, you didn't even necessarily need a computer. You needed a 10 key and you had pieces of paper that you might be adding things up on. But now royalty auditors need to be able to, at least modern royalty auditors that are doing digital exploitation compliance audits, need to have database skills. They spend time querying databases, but also putting together what we call report schedules, which are where we present our calculations to the parties at the end of an audit. And also a big part of a royalty auditor's job is not only calculating damages, but also communicating the basis for those calculations so that the parties can understand it clearly and reach hopefully a settlement agreement. So communication is another really important aspect of royalty auditing. So I think royalty auditors spend a lot of time analyzing data, also a lot of time communicating with counterparties to follow up for information, and a lot of time communicating.
That's awesome. So it's pretty much basically you're checking up for your clients to see if these entertainment companies are paying them royalties properly, pretty much.
Right.
And if they don't, then holding them accountable.
That's right. We work with the legal team to hold them accountable.
Word. Okay, that's amazing. That's awesome. And speaking of the entertainment industry, this next question comes from SJ. He's curious, what are your favorite and least favorite things about working in with the entertainment industry overall?
Well, I have discovered that, I explained earlier that the way I got into accounting was through entertainment, was through the music industry specifically. And I used to think back then when I got started, I used to think, oh, I wouldn't want to do this work for anything other than music, because I was passionate about music my whole life. But it turns out I really like other kinds of engagements that are non-entertainment. I mean, I really enjoy patent and trademark and all kinds of things where people are, usually business, it's a business dispute over money. And so I've really branched out from the entertainment business because I find it really rewarding to help everyone, not just entertainers. But I think another thing about me that I've learned is, I'm very logical, and I do not prefer to have direct contact with our clients. Even though we are engaged a lot of times by, actually a lot of times we're engaged by the attorneys on behalf of their clients, and that's how I prefer it, because I find that a lot of time, like very creative people who aren't as detail oriented as I am, or experienced in the challenges and pros and cons of spending time doing analysis on things, a lot of times it is a challenge to communicate to them the basis for our findings. And when I was mentioning communication is important, it really is, because we have a wide variety of an audience, because we have, most of the people who I'm writing to usually in a report are the attorneys, because they're the ones that are in charge of interpreting the contracts and settling it. But when we have like an artist who's involved directly, I have to really work hard to communicate to them too, which I would communicate in a totally different way, I've learned. And so my job is easier if all I have to do is communicate with the attorneys. And so it's just much easier for me. And so, if the question's, what do you like or not like about the entertainment industry? To be honest with you, like, I'm more of a backstage person. I don't really like dealing directly with the talent.
Interesting. And it's like when you say you have to like basically communicate very differently for your clients, is pretty much dumbing things down, like you talk in very technical terms with the attorneys. Yeah.
I don't know if it's totally dumbing things down, but yeah, there's definitely different nomenclature. That's one of the challenges. But I mean, I don't want to overgeneralize, because obviously every creator is different. But there are a lot of creators who worry, and for good reason, that they're just being ripped off all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes they won't take for an answer, well, either we didn't find anything wrong, or it doesn't make sense to do that analysis because we're not going to find enough money to cover our fees. And, I think it could be very frustrating to them if they feel, and another thing is, settlements, legal settlements aren't always what the client sees as fair. And so I think sometimes they feel like a settlement is unfair. So if we put in an audit report all the possible claims, some of those claims might be weaker or stronger than others. And in the end, we might advise the client to settle for less than the full amount that we claimed in the report. I mean, that would be typical, actually. And so I think a lot of times, you want to manage their expectations because, they're probably not going to get a settlement for the full amount of the audit report. And so I just think it's challenging for them to know what to expect because they hear horror stories about other artists being ripped off. And it's also the concept of rough justice is sometimes lost on certain people, and that's something I feel like attorneys are more comfortable with.
Yeah, I feel like one of the main things I picked up in Professor Green's class. If you guys don't know who that is, check out his episode. He's great. But I feel like one of the main things I picked up from his class is all the horror stories of, musicians being screwed over by management and things like that. So yeah, I get why they'd be concerned, but it's good they have people like you backstage taking care of them.
Thanks.
Um, okay, so this next question is from Ari. Um, how are technologies like AI and open source licensing models affecting the IP industry, in your opinion?
Yes. So I was listening to a podcast, one of the Tim Ferriss podcasts, where it was a recent one where I think he interviewed Kevin Kelly from Wired. And Kevin is a great mind, and like I really enjoy hearing what he has to say, which is why I was listening to the podcast. But he takes the position that nobody's going to lose their job because of AI, and I respectfully disagree with that position. I mean, I definitely think it already is impacting lower level creative work. So I think there are fewer jobs. There's no reason to budget that much if there's some things that can be satisfied by low level of creativity, which I guess is arguable and may change over time. But so on the lower scale, I'm not talking about superstar level, but people who are graphic designers and also music, I do think that AI is going to replace some of that demand or supply, I guess. But on the other hand, I mean, the genie is out of the bottle, so to speak. And so I think we have to find a way to make peace with it and to help it enhance, humankind. And I think a lot of people are trying to do that. I mean, one thing that's sort of interesting is a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, I was at a music investors conference in New York, the one that I'm planning to go to again this year. And every single panel was asking this question of like, how is AI changing the value of your rights, these IP rights? And I was disappointed that even though every panel asked that question, nobody really got into the nitty gritty. I mean, everybody had some optimistic talking points, right? But nobody ever like was really talking about what the threat could mean to the industry. And so when we do music catalog valuations, one of not just music, but generally that's a lot of what I do for valuations. We take different methodologies in mind, but one of the main methodologies that we use is we figure out what cash these assets are going to throw off in the future, and we discount that back to today's dollars, not only for the time value of money, but also the risk. And so when a big potential catastrophic risk is facing the industry, even if the odds are very low that it will totally disrupt it, that catastrophic possible risk needs to be taken account in part of the discount rate called the beta. And so I'm really interested in having conversations with other practitioners about how they are adjusting for risk in their discount rates. Especially the betas. I mean, at least at our firm, we have um, adjusted for it, contemplating somewhat higher level of risk, meaning it pushes downward pressure on the value of rights that could be impacted by this. So I do think it's a real thing that's happening in deals right now, and even on the big scale, as well as like people losing their jobs.
Yeah. And I mean, I actually love this question too, how it came up today, because I see AI affecting music itself as is. So it's like if it's affecting music as is, like certainly it's going to be affecting, everything behind it as well. Like, I don't know, are you familiar with the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef at all? You're
A
aware of
little bit, not intimately, but yes,
it?
I saw some headlines.
At one point, like earlier in the beef, Drake released a song with AI, Tupac, and Snoop Dogg,
Mhm.
and everyone's saying like, "Oh, it was disrespectful, respectful, whatever." I saw it as so ironic because Drake was one of the main musicians in the beginning that was getting, AI'd,
Right.
so to
Who,
speak.
who had them take
He was
down?
he was like the
Yeah,
one taking the stuff down and everything. So
right. And then he did it to the
wild.
Tupac Shakur estate, which had him take it down. I mean, the other thing that's really interesting about this, and I think this would be a good development as somebody that has a lot of IP rights holding clients, but um, basically, I am hopeful that we will have like a federal right of publicity as a result of AI. I think that it's complicated to go state by state. And so I like the idea of having a federal law that covers that.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully they can I'm sorry, hopefully they or we can find a, way to make it fair for not only the creators that are like directly being imitated and copied, but also obviously all of the creators and rights owners whose works were used to train the models. And so I think both are important.
Mhm. Exactly. And it's like, and honestly, it's just like even with all that, it's just like as much as I like Drake, I like listening to his music here and there. I don't want to listen to him in 2080. I want to experience him now. Okay, yeah. So this next question comes from Victoria. She's curious because we talked in the beginning about how music brought you into the business side of it pretty much, like you're passionate about music. She's curious what inspired you to create Boschan Corp.
Sure. So I need to say, like, even though I got into it because I was motivated by being in the music business, I mean, really pretty early on, I decided I like doing all kinds of things. So I'm not really just a music expert. But but anyway, the reason why I was inspired to start Boschan Corporation had to do with just sort of like the arc of my career. And, for 8 years, I worked at the boutique accounting firm that I mentioned, Walensky, Becker, and Hurwitz. And then that firm merged with a larger firm called Miller, Kaplan, and Arase. And when that happened, I saw an opportunity to join one of the partners from Walensky, Becker, and Hurwitz. I joined Matthew Hurwitz in starting our own firm in Century City. And so I think that was 2008 or 2009. And we started Hurwitz, Boschan and Company. And so for 4.5 years, we were, a CPA firm there that focused on the same kinds of things that I do now, with probably a greater emphasis on auditing. I feel like since then, my practice has branched out into more litigation matters and other kinds of consulting engagements as well as auditing. But anyway, my practice is just a continuation of what I was doing back then. And so, we had a firm for several years, and then I was feeling like with our small firm, I just felt like I was trying to be all things to all people on some level. And I thought it would be better if I focused my practice on only a couple of areas and moved to a bigger firm where they could handle the other clients that I had. And so I moved to a bigger firm called Green Hassan Jenks, which is a CPA firm and it's a pretty, it's got a couple hundred people, I think. I don't know. But it's based in Los Angeles. Um, and it is really well known for film and TV audits. So I thought, oh, they can take all my film and TV stuff and I can focus on music and games because I kind of brought music and games to them. And so that sounds good, but it wasn't right for me personally and professionally. I mean, after a couple of years, I was a new mom and my daughter was going to be going to preschool and I really wanted to have an office near her preschool so I could go pick her up and I could have her at the office if I needed to. And so for personal reasons, and also I had some clients that pressured me to sort of start my own firm. They thought it would be better if I had my own firm. And I do like to have the flexibility of, making more decisions that at a bigger firm they wouldn't make, taking on certain kinds of clients that may not make sense financially, but I want to help. And so I just wanted the freedom to do that and to also spend time with my daughter at that point in my life. And so I started Boschan Corporation, I think in March of 2015 in Beverly Hills. And it was like walking distance from my house and my daughter's preschool. And it was a nice lifestyle for the couple years that we were in Beverly Hills. And then we moved to Culver City. And that's actually where my daughter still goes to school. But that's basically what motivated me to start Boschan Corporation, were like lifestyle decisions. And also I did get a push from a few clients, especially a really big client who just thought they wanted me to go out on my own. And so I'm not on my own now, though. I mean, we have a team of people. And so I feel more supported than ever in my career with the people we have. So it's
That's
been great.
awesome. That's great. And the flexibility of it all is so true too. It's like I was with my family this weekend, and one of them said like, oh, if you start your own company, if you start your own business, you're not gonna have any time to do anything. And I was just like, well, that's just false, because if you run your own business, you have the most flexibility. You're your own boss.
It
Pretty
depends on the business. I mean, I should point out that by the time I started my own firm, I had already had my own practice, for like 6 or 7 years. And I had been doing it for like, I don't know how many years, 15 years, or I don't even know how many years. But so I already had a product, so to speak, really a service that people were buying. I already had, a book of business. And so I would say I earned that by doing a lot of overtime over the years. That's how I was able to rise so quickly, among other reasons. But I think if you're just going to have a startup company where you're going to be doing something completely new and you don't already have clients paying you to do things, I think that probably is true, that like you aren't going to have a lot of time. And I was just lucky that at that point in my career, I wasn't having to go out and bring in a lot of business. So I was able to sacrifice that time.
Yeah, so now we have a few anonymous questions. Um, this first one, what was the most unexpected challenge of your career?
Um, I don't know why this would be unexpected given the things that we hear about, but it was actually breaking into my career. I was surprised about something. It's really just that appearances matter. I mean, they really matter a lot. So when I decided I wanted to be a royalty auditor, I was applying for jobs. I was looking for a job for 9 months, actually. This is in 2000. This is after the dot-com bubble burst.
Mhm.
And I was holding out for the right job, which is why I was waiting that long. But basically I would have interviews and nobody would want to hire me. And I dyed my hair brown. And within a week, I had 5 job offers. Two of them were from, one of them was from Walensky, Becker, and Hurwitz. 2 of them were royalty audit jobs. And so I wish I had figured that out earlier. And so I was surprised what a big difference it makes. And now also when I dyed my hair brown, people treated me totally differently. It was really strange. Yeah, I'm more comfortable being a blonde because that's what I've been my whole life, but it was really interesting to see how people treat you differently when you change your appearance. And I do think that impacts not only my career, but also client careers. I'm developing an awareness of how the appearance of witnesses testifying in court really influences the outcome, in my opinion. And so I don't know why I didn't see that coming. I mean, we always hear about it in the media about how, especially for women, appearance matters. But I was surprised how drastically it impacted just even breaking into my career.
Mhm. And honestly, it's like when you first started talking, I was expecting you were going to go along the route. It's like, getting into this industry is very hard. Like it is. Like getting into entertainment or sports, very rough industry to get into as is. And then you went up, you said the appearances matter. It's true, but it's like, wow, that's actually really shocking,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
especially in the more recent days, where it's like everyone's supposed to look at the resume first.
Right. We just
Yeah,
at Boschan Corp, we decide if we want to hire somebody before we interview them. Um,
that's
and yeah, I mean, it's basically the interview is really for them to ask questions. And so, because I have read that studies show that you make better hires if you just look at a resume rather than do a job interview. We have a really complicated application process, actually, but once somebody makes it through all of that, like I'm willing to give them a shot no matter how they do in the interview.
that's great. That's awesome. Okay, so the next anonymous question we got, in your opinion, what's the most difficult account you've ever worked on?
Hmm. There really isn't one that stands out. Um, I have had a variety of, a lot of our engagements are challenging, but in different ways. Um, I do think one of the things that is probably one of the biggest pain points for me is what I mentioned earlier about um, communicating directly with talent. I think that always it can literally make the engagement take 50% longer sometimes because I just have to explain everything twice or a lot of, I don't know. It's makes it much less efficient. And so for me, that's actually one of I try to avoid engagements where I'm going to be dealing directly with the talent. Um, but other than that, in terms of the actual work, each type of engagement has its unique challenges. I mean, one of the themes is since we're dealing in information, is not getting enough information and having to follow up to get that information, and then not getting enough information to calculate everything that we need. And then to have our findings, attacked because we didn't have enough information. It's sort of like this sort of a script that's on repeat a little bit with a lot of engagements. But ultimately, I mean, there have been some that have taken more, some are more complicated than others. But for me, even though those might be the most challenging, those are also the more interesting and engaging. And so I wouldn't consider those I mean, I feel like the more boring ones are more difficult for me than the hard ones, if that makes any sense.
I hear that. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. It's like because I mean I'm getting the vibe that you like your job.
Yes, I love my job.
So it's like if you love your job, then it tends not to like feel as difficult unless it gets boring. It's like when the job's boring, that's when the job's most difficult,
Right.
I would guess.
Glad
Yeah.
that our work is project based. I mean, we do have ongoing corporate clients, so that's true, but generally speaking, it's not like I'm going to the same job every day, because every day is different and every project is unique.
Nice. Okay. So now we got an anonymous question that's dealing with your experience as an auditor and what you'd kind of suggest. In your royalty audits that revealed artists were being underpaid, what was the most common cause? I mean,
Contract interpretation. So it's not typically accounting errors. It is normally different interpretations of ambiguous language in the relevant agreements.
so it's keeping with the theme of communication and how
Sort
difficult.
of. I mean, I think sometimes when parties are entering into an agreement, they know that some of the language is ambiguous, but it would be an impediment to reaching the agreement to continually argue about it. And so it's not, a lot of the time they leave it that way, understanding that probably there will never be an audit, probably won't be profitable. Probably if it is profitable, there will never be an audit. And then if there is an audit, then they can work it out at that point in time. And so it just doesn't make, I understand from a negotiation standpoint, it wouldn't make sense to lose the whole deal over a deal point that like may never come to pass, and that sort of a thing. So I think both parties know that sometimes that some of the language could be challenged. And I don't think it's exactly a communication problem. I think it's how it's sort of, they've agreed to not agree, maybe.
Mhm.
And so ultimately, that is the main issue.
Just
Yeah.
communication.
Just like the terms in the agreement not being complied with from the standpoint of whoever our client is. And so that's really what it's mainly about. That's what most of the findings stem from. The underpayments have to do with how a company has applied the terms of the contract. I mean, one thing that I do see happen, maybe this would help understand another more innocuous way of looking at it. So I found this especially true in the video game industry, but I think it is true in other places as well, where the team of people who are negotiating the agreement, like a game development agreement or something, aren't in finance. They're legal, business affairs, attorneys. And guess who's going to be asked to prepare the profit participation or royalty accounting? It's some low-level staff person in the finance department who has no training in contracts. And the people who are specifying, oh, is it going to be based on gross or net or whatever it is, how do they know if that report can even be produced by the finance department? And they don't, or they should ask, but a lot of the time they don't. And so it's like the person whose job it is to prepare the accounting is, even if they're doing the best they can, may not have the tools available to them to even prepare the report correctly, and or know enough about what the contract says to know whether it is correct or not. And so I think that's just failure to interpret the contract or failure to consult the finance team when negotiating the terms of the contract. And so therefore it can lead to mistakes, right, in underpayments or overpayments or whatever. And so that has to, so it's the similar issue of just non-compliance with the contract terms rather than a literal like data entry error or something like that. And I will say, when I talk about interpretations in the contract, I think there's another big theme of, if you want to avoid those gray areas in at least IP and entertainment, really any kind of deal with a big company, I think it's really important to focus on language addressing the methodology for making allocations, especially intercompany allocations. That's usually the part that goes unsaid in the contract. But that's where, if we don't think the allocation has been fair to our client, like, we are going to make claims and try to get the information we need to do that. And so I think focusing on clarifying allocations, if one wishes to avoid some of this ambiguity, would be a good place to start.
Yeah. Totally agree. And we have one more anonymous question here, and that's how would you suggest songwriters audit their publishers to make sure administration is being done correctly?
So typically in your administration agreement or your co-publishing agreement, or whatever agreement you may have, there should be an audit provision that has been negotiated. It's might be under the accounting section, and it gives you the right to contest your accountings within a certain period of time, and often the right to conduct an examination. And so it's typically pursuant to the agreement that you've negotiated with the administrator or the publisher. And so you would have your attorney hire someone like us, and we would work with the attorney to issue audit notices as well as objection notices, because there's a deadline to object to the accountings, and to request a tolling agreement with the publisher so that the statute of limitations wouldn't, or the contractual limitations period wouldn't expire to challenge older periods. And then we would work with the publisher to obtain documentation and review it and report back to you along the way so that you could decide if it was worthwhile to have us continue on the audit. But assuming that you wished us to continue on the audit, we would proceed over the span of several months, sometimes more than a year, to obtain information and analyze it and identify areas of noncompliance. And then we would prepare an audit report, and we would submit that to our client. And if the client wished, we would also submit it to the counterparty, the publisher. And then we would work with the client's legal team to hopefully settle any audit claims among the parties. Or if it ultimately didn't settle and it went into litigation, we could provide expert witness services pursuant to our engagement. But that's basically how audits work of music publishers.
Word. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. We have I mean the way the show works is the first question always comes from me, and the last question also always comes from me. And
Okay.
that's, if you had to give one piece of advice to the people watching at home, what would you say?
I would say side with love.
Side with love?
Yes.
Explain that.
I think you should just take a stand for, what you think is right.
All right. Side with love, ladies and gentlemen. Cedar, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. If you guys like this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. If you guys want to follow up with what's going on with the show, make sure to check the links down below for all the socials and our website. If you want to see what's going on with Cedar, I'm going to add her links down below as well. And that, this has been the YAWP podcast. My name is Eden Toronto, and I will see you guys next week.
Yup.